on either side here. Got a lot of seats on it. Welcome back, and I hope you see something new on this trip. Well, this is our largest known room in our cavern system. It's called the Cathedral Room, which is 1,150 foot long by 180 feet wide at the widest point where we just walked in from. At the center of the room, from ceiling to floor, it is 65 feet tall with that giant column. If you look along the south wall, which is over here from behind you, just as far as your eyes can reach, all the way across the room, we have 970 feet of continuous formations. Very highly decorated room. The draperies or curtains on this side of the wall here are 55 feet tall. The coloring, the browns, oranges, yellowish colors we see, basically all iron oxide. You folks find this in your basins at home, you'll call it rust. We call it iron oxide, sounds a little better. Also, the sort of a silverish gray we see on the north side. That is manganese oxide. The little crystals sparkling in the background, those are the calcite crystals themselves that form. All the formations we're looking at are made out of calcite. The white colors you'll notice about the cave is the actual color of the calcite. Calcite, six-sided water-bonded crystal, translucent. The dark substance on the outside is from being touched by a lot of people, but you can see all the crystals sparkling in there. I'm going to pass that one around, let you touch it, and see what it feels like.
What's it called?
Now here's another piece of the same pretty crystal, sparkles. If you notice, that sort of a reddish tinge to it. That's your iron oxide beginning to form. Now the calcite and the iron oxide do not bond together, so that it actually pushes the coloring to the outside surface. Inside of any of the formations we look at today is the same milky white crystal. Well, folks, do you have any questions about the cave itself? Quite a quiet group. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys questions then. Let's find out how much we know. I mentioned Blanchard is a living, growing cave. Right here we can actually see the formation starting to form right before our eyes. That water dripping in brings in the calcite in solution. As the water drips in, if it drips in very slowly from the ceiling, which it's not right here, it's dripping in very quickly, it'll leave stalactites. But here it's coming, so therefore it builds much faster from the ground up. As it splatters, it disperses a lot of the carbon dioxide that's picked up in the atmosphere and in the soil. Cannot hold as much calcite in solution. It deposits that calcite much faster that way. The little tiny ripples in the pool, as they ripple about, they find a rough spot and they deposit little bits of calcite. As they get larger and larger, they form these rimstone dams we see here, travertine terraces. Now, very slow dripping water coming over concave ledge is responsible for building the draperies. 55 feet tall. If you notice, they didn't look quite that big as we sat up there and looked down. There's really not much to compare size here with. If you look at the giant column from this side, if I said right now it would take 33 of us to form a human chain around the base of that, you probably would not believe it. Well, let's go over to the other side and put on some of those 1,000-watt floodlights. For you photographers, here's coming up one of your best photo opportunities. We look back up to where we were sitting that a good or a bad thing?
Bad.
That's a good thing, because it only falls on Mondays.
Oh.
Today's Sunday, so we're a day ahead of it. No, really, it's stabilized itself many, many years ago. If it hadn't, we wouldn't be down here. What happened is the water carved out the cave here with the phreatic tube, water coming through at a pretty good force, actually helping support the ceiling. Now, as the water level started to drop due to the erosion of the valleys and hillsides, it didn't have that pressure to support it anymore. So layer upon layer upon layer started falling off and forming that nice domed out or cathedral ceiling. When we enter a large room like this, especially with a large expansive ceiling, you want to see a stabilized ceiling. We've copied Mother Nature's way of stabilizing when we build bridges, porch stones. Very, very solid, very secure. All the weight of all the rock above us is actually being transferred to the walls. The walls are doing all the work now. And right now we're 240 feet underground. This is the deepest we're going to be today. Let's go look at that giant house. Put on a series of 4 floodlights here for you. Incredible what 1,000-watt lights can do in a cave, isn't it?
That's beautiful. Right here, you want to stand up there and I'll take that picture. Turn around, everybody. Get it, get it.
Well, folks, now you see why it would take 33 adults to form a human chain around the base of that formation. What we're looking at here basically is stalagmite growing from the ground way up to this level right here. Here's where the stalactites have touched, forming the column. And if we look at these puny little stalactites up here, just imagine these are exactly the same age as that stalagmite growing up to meter. So given enough years, they will touch. It won't be in our lifetime. Anybody like to try to guesstimate the age of that?
Couple thousand years?
2 million.
Well, you're getting close. They have given us estimates anywhere from 2 to 4, possibly even 5 to 6 million years old. They say again, they're guesstimating, they say the cave itself started forming somewhere between 40 to 60 million years ago. I don't know who's here to gauge that, but it wasn't me. There's a lot of schools of geology will say they're much younger, some will say they're much older. So make up your own opinion what you want them to be. The drapery I mentioned comes over concave walls. You notice we're under a concave wall. And right above us we have drapery all coming down here. Eventually they're going to connect right along here and close in this area. So we'd be standing behind a wall of drapery here at some point. I'm not worried about it myself. Somebody's got to figure out a new place to stand, but it's not going to be me. Folks, have any questions here before we move along? You have questions?
What's that white thing down there?
What now?
The white thing.
The white, that's the calcite. That's your pure calcite form. Well, folks, as we walk up the trail here,
Okay.
What's that blue?
now, do we have any chocolate lovers in the group here? You like chocolate? Okay, look up at the ceiling. That is iron oxide and manganese intermixed, gives us that chocolate appearance. A lot of people look up there and the first words out of their mouth, Rocky Road ice cream. Over here we have all kinds of little soda straws. These are baby stalactites. Your stalactites start from just a little white patch of calcite on the ceiling. Water keeps dripping, forming these thin little tubes. They're about the same thickness as a soda straw. Now eventually they get thicker, then they stop up. When that happens, they grow from the outside and they start getting that classic carrot cake that's so used to seeing in the stalactite. Now when our explorers got to this part of the cave, they would have to travel in this direction. They would go overland. They would take one look at that, and they would decide not to go that way. That is bat guano or bat manure. You can see at one time we had a lot of bats that used to frequent this part of the cave. They would travel around that, where the blue line is. Normally there's a waterfall up there. They got a 58-degree shower in that waterfall, laid on their belly and crawled over 230 feet over sharp muddy rock into the next room. Now we didn't think a lot of people would like to do that. We had some mining engineers come in. How can we link the two rooms together and still keep it accessible to people with walking problems, people with strollers, people in wheelchairs? They suggested going to the side of the cavern. At that point, dynamite a deep shaft down. Then use their dynamite to build a tunnel from the inside out. As they blasted, the shock waves went up the shaft. No damage to the cave that way. They worked their way to each end. Put away their dynamite at the last 10, 12 feet. Opened it up using nothing but air drills.
It all goes somewhere.
I don't know. I'm sure it does.
Well, folks, if you turn around and look at that support I mentioned holding up the rock, and look up above it, that's how Miroslav Flug hit all the wiring. If you walk through, never looking back, you'd never even realize that wasn't part of the cave, would you? That's where the main power line comes down from the transformer up on the mountaintop. Pretty clever guy. The wall over here is one of the spots where water comes in, probably one of the first places after a heavy rain. Within 45 minutes after a really heavy downpour, we have water gush in from all these pockets along here. That water comes in here so fast, so hard, it's actually dissolving away the limestone walls, removing the existing formation that was on the wall. Process called resolutioning. Kind of say it's Mother Nature's way of redecorating. She's in the demolition stage now, removing. The cave is actually getting bigger at that point because it's rubbing away that wall. Now all that water ends up down in the lower parts of the cave. Possibly a little of it is actually being added to more formation. Bulk of it washes out of Blanchard Spring. About 7,000 to 9,000 gallons a minute, 10 million gallons a day, carrying with it many tons of limestone in solution out of the cave system. So the system is still getting larger. So folks, you see what the effect of the fast-moving water is over there. Directly in front of us, a very good example. That bill. So all the formations are made out of calcite, calcium carbonate, ClCO3. Pretty much useless. You could grind it up very, very fine, add a little saccharin, maybe a little peppermint flavor to that, press it into tablets, you'd have tons of rollage. But other than that, it hasn't got a whole lot of industrial use. The most valuable thing in the cave are these black piles we've noticed. We walked in here, big ones on the other side of the passageway, a couple big ones right behind us. Over here, granddaddy of all bat piles. That is expensive stuff if you go out to buy it. About $10 to $12 a pound is organic fertilizer. 33% pure nitrate. We leave it right where it is because that's the beginning of the food chain for the creatures that live in the cave. If you were born in the cave, lived your life out, and died in the cave, something has to sustain your life. And basically, that is the Burger King or the McDonald's of the cave right there. So all your little cave creatures depend one way or another because you got a lot of bacteria that feed in the pile. They're actually breaking it down. Other small little creatures, little flatworms, little beetles, little isopods, they're in there munching up them. Pulls the roost down here, gobbles up everything he can get his hands on. But without the guano, we would not have 81 species of cave life here. So that's all basic to the food chain for them. Now, I don't know if you folks love bats or not as much as I do, but I love bats. Number one, I hate mosquitoes. Look, pretty, sparkling, growing crystal. But look at the other side. That doesn't look too good, does it? One reason or another, it's no longer getting water to this side. So this side is what we call dormant, not growing. If it stays dormant for a long time, the bacteria starts to work on it, it starts falling apart like you see right there. That is absolutely dead formation, beyond hope. Here it's dormant. If it gets water again, it may start to develop again. Large formation here is called a flow stone. Water drips in and keeps building and building and building. The water runs off over the floor and also leaves calcite behind. That's called a flow stone. Now that's kind of a small one in comparison to some we have down on the lower level. We look up at the flow stone though. You might notice we have, looks like kind of a winter scene. What's a winter scene without a snowman? You notice right here we do have a snowman. We're going to go through a spot we call Temptation Pass. Now guys, remember we cannot touch, so if you have to put your hands in your pockets, fold them, whatever it takes, but remember do not touch. We're going to be in very close proximity to the formation. We're going to go. But it's 37 years to take transportation company. Retired in '58. I came here. I spent a couple of years working on my place, and then I decided to take a job here. Because I've done a caver since about your age. I started at 7 years old. Now, folks, we've gone from 240 feet to 131 feet there. We call that the soda straw room, one of the most decorated rooms in the cave. You do the Discovery Trail, you'll see the ghost room, which is on the other side of the valley. At one time, we believe they actually connected until water came along, carved the cave in half at that point. But when Hugh Shell and Hal Bryant came in here in 1963, their backs were almost up to the rock. This room was filled with gravel and rock like we see here. And they noticed all these formations broken. Looking about in the gravel, they found a lot of these broken tips that were missing. So they figured that must have been natural breakage. Looking at the soil and the ground and the rock, they found there were bits of leaves and sticks and other material that don't belong in the cave amongst it. The dirt don't belong in this cave because this is outdoor soil. They found that was the bottom of an old sinkhole. What we think happened is water rushing down to the bottom of the valley, picked up all this debris with it, carried it in through the cave. A lot of water probably went along with it, filling up this part of the room pretty much with gravel. We think that bouncing gravel coming in broke the tips off of these. Now there is a drunk bat theory, but we don't go with that one. I know Jana likes that one, but I don't really go with that one. You notice some of them are actually replacing their tips here. So given enough years, they will replace themselves. Again, here you can see how the coloring is. Only on the inside with your milky white, and your color itself, the iron oxide, on the outside. Well guys, if you enjoyed this, we do have the Discovery Trail.
Curtains up there, you're right. And over here, what are these called?
What?
Someone's paying attention to you. Over here we've got what we call flowstone. Actually, this is going to be the last of these formations for a while. On the other side, we've got pretty much bare limestone rock, and this is what we'll be seeing for the first half of the tour. But I promise there's going to be stuff like this. We call it cave bacon. Might remind you of breakfast a little bit. However, there is a third discovery. discovery, and that's made by people like you almost every hour and a half each day. And they realized that I wasn't lying when I said that there were 700 steps. For everyone going down, you got a brother or sister coming up somewhere along the tour, and I'm not trying to discourage you because I want you guys to come on this tour. It's going to be lots of fun. But if you guys decide that maybe this was the wrong tour and you want to be on the dripstone where it's real easy going, Bill wants to hear about it now. And I'm real concerned about his health because when we get all the way to the bottom and somebody then decides they want to come back up, he develops a deafness. He can't really hear anymore. And water, having carved out that passage, the buoyancy was actually the support for that ceiling. As it dropped to develop these next levels of the cave, you no longer had that support, so the ceiling would fall out and dome out like that. And then you have the surface weight being distributed to the walls and to the ground, and that's what spelunkers like to see when they're going into caves. What do you see up here? Pretty flat, isn't it? Well, are you ready to go? Walk right underneath this? Are you not questioning it at all?
I want to go.
Actually, they did take core samples of this layer of limestone, found it to be a very heavily cemented and safe and stable piece of bedrock. Also, they were also able to determine how thick this was, and well, this stuff also has CO2. So the CO2 is released, calcite's deposited, and you get a lip to form. As that lip is having more water running over it, more calcite gets deposited, and these brimstone dams will begin to form. They're pretty neat. Kind of look like the Great Wall of China down there. We're actually going to see some that are a little bit bigger than those later on in the tour. You don't see any water in them right now because we are experiencing a drought right now. The reason they call this cave a living cave is because it does receive water, but I think we're about 6 inches below what we normally get. We will have water that will flow across here, and as I said before, that duck walk will get water in it too. If you see anything in here besides the trails and the lights that just doesn't belong in here, that's kind of out of place. That arrow? Yeah, did everybody see the arrow over here on the wall? What do you think that's pointing to? Trail? Out. Yes. We're not sure who actually put that there. When we asked Michelle and Hal Bryant, that exploration team for 1663, if they did, they said that they hadn't. Hopefully not on this tour. Down here at the bottom where we have this blue light, this is the other side of the duck walk. Take a left, go about 90 feet, and you'll come to where we had seen it in the discovery room. Up the top, you see what would have had to have been scaled. It would have come across here to go through that phreatic tube. Then you go another 50 feet to that pancake crawl up there. So the easiest would have been this in that second route. And
like the passage. This is a picture of the passenger over there.
Alright, well this is the stream passage, 4,000 feet. You're going to end up at the Blanchard Springs where all this water will be gushing out. If you haven't checked it out, you need to. But there's only one team of explorers that actually traveled through this passageway. That was in 71. You had 3 geology students from Memphis State University. They put on scuba diving gear, went through. They said they found about 5 different air-filled rooms throughout the passageway. Some of them contained formations like stalactites or soda straws that were about 5 feet in length. Said some formations were 55-foot tall glowstones. Some pretty amazing stuff. They're the only ones who say that they've ever seen a fish, though. They don't have any proof, and nobody else has seen any fish in this water. But the reason we think is because there's no channels that are big enough that come into the cave to allow fish to come through. However, they did find several different interesting creatures in there. A couple salamanders, and we're probably going to see some salamanders when we get closer to the natural entrance. But we're going to go ahead and move that way. And when we do get to the railing, everybody needs to get a chance to at least look up because you've got direct sunlight coming in and you can see the green trees, which is just really neat. And one more thing, is anybody interested in knowing how cold that water is?
How cold is it?
It's about 58 degrees, just like the air, but grab onto this handrail and that gives you a good idea how cold it is.
Pretty cold for
You want to go swimming?
Yeah, this is like a sinkhole.
Yeah, we've had some guys pick up the snake. They kind of go to sleep in here because it is so cold. Of course, they're going to wake up pretty quickly, so get them out. But I had a good question about how we got this acidic still coming into the cave. It's really peaceful, isn't it?
Yeah.
However, this obviously was formed underwater. There's some other places where it can be formed above water. Think of it kind of like a sponge, and the pores in the sponge, if you have a lot of water in it and you squish it, you've got that water oozing out. Well, hydrostatic pressure in the walls will cause water to kind of ooze out of cracks and crevices, and it'll deposit calcite like that. There is one more way to, say you've got a waterfall in a cave, that mist will have calcite in it and deposit it on the walls too. We'll see where that could 10 feet and be pretty disappointing. However, there's another flowstone. We have put a thermometer right in the water, how much calcite comes in, the acidity of the water too, as to the rate and how quickly that will actually join together.
But it looked like it had been touching at one time, not separated. I don't know.
But that one hasn't. At the salamander pool, there was a piece that was broken off of the column. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but that's because it was formed on a clay base. And